Who knows what evil lurks in the hearts of men? The Stoic knows. Stay tuned for another jam-packed, exciting episode of The Stoic.
Justice, temperance, wisdom, courage. Applying ancient philosophy to modern times, this is the Sunday Stoic. Episode 32 of the Sunday Stoic. Today's episode will focus on fortune and fate, at least my understanding of them as I'm learning this philosophy. So to get us started, let's have a short quote from Moral Letters to Lucilius, number 104 from Seneca, on care of health and peace of mind. The only harbor safe from the seething storms of this life is to scorn the future, a firm stand, a readiness to receive fortune's missiles full in the breast, neither skulking nor turning the back. So what we'll see here is, at least from my understanding, once again, not a scholar on Stoicism, but fortune and fate were originally goddesses. The fates were three different goddesses working together to determine your lifespan and the major events of your life. And fortune, or Fortuna, is the goddess of chance. I'd like to think of this in our own sense, at least in the U.S., you talk about Lady Luck, like the song, "Luck be a lady tonight." I think of it that way. So if you are enjoying the show so far, I appreciate you writing in and downloading and reviewing and all that good stuff. You can email me at sundaystoic@gmail.com. I do like it when listeners volunteer to do a reading, so you can read some ancient Stoicism and we can include it in the podcast, as long as you read from a public domain source, not from a more recent publication. And I'm doing my best to keep up with the show. I've had one come out every week so far. Life's crazy with a 1-year-old and a full-time job and a house and everything else, but I do my best to put these out once a week. Quality of the episodes may vary a little from time to time, depending on how much stress I'm under, but I appreciate it. This is, said in the past, this is more for me. I do this podcast to help me put my own ideas together while I'm learning. My ideas may change. I haven't read every piece of Stoic work, Stoic literature out there, but as I do, I incorporate some of what I read into the podcast. So sometimes topics may repeat as I grow in knowledge, and sometimes my ideas may change as I think about things more deeply. But Stoicism is a philosophy. It's up for debate. It's up for change. So let's see what the Stoics have to say about this concept of fortune and fate. Moral Letters to Lucilius, number 74. Virtue as a refuge from worldly distractions. Verse 6. Whoever has largely surrendered himself to the power of fortune has made for himself a huge web of disquietude, from which he cannot get free. If one would win a way to safety, there is but one road: to despise externals, and to be contented with that which is honorable. Reading number 2 from the Enchiridion of Epictetus, number 8. Demand not that events should happen as you wish, but wish them to happen as they happen, and you will go on well. Moral Letters to Lucilius by Seneca, number 37, on allegiance to virtue. Proceed with steady step, and if you would have all things under your control, put yourself under the control of reason. If reason becomes your ruler, you will become ruler over many. You will learn from her what you should undertake and how it should be done, and you will not blunder into things. You can show me no man who knows how he began to crave that which he craves. He has not been led to that pass by forethought. He has been driven to it by impulse. Fortune attacks us as often as we attack fortune. It is disgraceful, instead of proceeding ahead, to be carried along, and then suddenly, amid the whirlpool of events, to ask in a dazed way, "How did I get into this condition?" Alright, so this episode, you might wonder, is this, I know some people don't like it when we go into the academics of Stoicism too much, like, what does this term mean? But I think it's important to, part of Stoicism is knowing what words mean and their power and understanding how to use them properly and to get every drop of wisdom out of the readings we can by understanding what they're trying to tell us. And like I said, I am not an expert in ancient Roman literature, nor am I an expert in philosophy. I'm a biology teacher, but this is something I am teaching myself to help myself become a better person. So fortune versus fate. So, what's the difference? What's the big deal? In Roman mythology, the fates were the three goddesses who determined your destiny and lifespan. So one of them's like weaving or spinning a thread, and the other one clips it to determine how long you'll live, and so on and so forth. And Fortuna is the goddess of chance, Lady Luck, as I said earlier. And I really don't know how much the Stoics took these goddesses literally, because they talk about fortune, they talk about fate, and they often capitalize, like Fortuna or fortune, they capitalize it as if referring to a goddess, not just the idea of fortune in general. But they do refer to them at least figuratively in their writings, if not literally. Here's my interpretation of all this, bringing in some Stoic analogies and things. Fate is where you're headed. We are all heading towards death, let's say. Fortune is the luck you encounter along the way. Personally, I do not much care for the phrase, everything happens for a reason. While I agree fundamentally that there's a cause and effect relationship in the universe, I disagree with the idea, and the idea that the Stoics held, that the universe is this giant rational thing with a plan. Luckily, Stoicism, as I've said in the past, is a philosophy. It is not a religion. So its parts can be debated. The thoughts of Epictetus or Seneca are not the thoughts of some Stoic pope that you have to accept. You are your own human being. You can take in what makes sense and what works and reject other things. Of course, there are some fundamental concepts that it could be argued if you don't accept, then it's not really Stoicism. But philosophy in the past did branch out. Different people would have different ideas, and new schools of thought will descend from those new ideas. So if Stoicism had survived all the way to the modern era, it wouldn't just be Stoicism one type with like Coke. There would be many flavors descended from those schools. Maybe a school of thought that descended from Marcus Aurelius and one from Epictetus, and then those would have branched as they evolved over time into different schools of thought. So I think it's okay not to accept fate in the literal sense. In Dr. Irvin's book, he tells us that we should think of the past in a fatalistic way. So not necessarily the future, like everything that happens to me happens for a reason. But in terms of the past, you should remember that you can't change it, and to dwell on it and fret about it is asinine. So think of the past in a fatalistic way. What is done is done. We can't change it. Also, in Irvin's book, he says the present is also more or less out of our control. We can't control where we are right now and what happens right now. So all we can do is apply virtue to the current situation and be the best person we can be in the situation that we find ourselves in. Now, the future is uncertain, so we shouldn't freak ourselves out about it. We can make plans for the future and things, but we have to accept, as the Stoics did, that they would often say, "Fate willing, I'm going to go to work tomorrow." Right? Once again, we don't have to accept fate as a literal thing, but assuming all goes as planned, I'm going to go on vacation next week. But maybe there are so many things out of your control. You cannot say with 100% certainty that you're going on vacation next week. I'm going on holiday on Thursday. Well, maybe you are. Maybe your water pipes will bust on Wednesday night and you'll be stuck at home making repairs for the next week and a half. Fate willing, you're going on a trip next Thursday, right? So they would put that little, I might do a show on this later, they would put that little tag into what they were saying to remind themselves not to be upset if things don't work out. But what's done is done. You can't control the past. You can't completely control the future. And the present is happening now, so we need to live in the present as virtuously as we can, be mindful of our current situation. Now, Epictetus tells us to not just live with what's happening to us. So we're talking about, in this case, we're talking about, I think, fate. Like these big things that happen to you. Epictetus says, don't just accept what's happening to your life, but love it. Now, I don't really necessarily agree with Epictetus on this point. Now, if I thought the universe had a wise plan, and whatever happened to me was part of this wise plan, I could make sense of what Epictetus is saying. But I disagree with that fundamental point. So, rather than take him literally here, what I think is, I'm going to let as many of the things that happen to me in life roll off my back as I can. Like water off a duck's back. But there are some things that are too big or too close to home that aren't just going to fade away. The loss of a loved one, your house burning down, or whatever. So all I can do in those cases is bear it with dignity. Bear those events with dignity. These are things we would prefer would not happen when we lose a loved one, for example. And they're not trivial affairs that I'm going to necessarily love having happened, right? That would, in my mind, be disrespectful to the one I lost. I will still feel pain. I will still mourn. But hopefully, Stoicism can help to keep me from slipping deep into depression or reaching for that bottle of whiskey to help dull the pain. So I don't think I can follow Epictetus all the way to his conclusion there. So when it comes to fate is the major events that are going to happen to you in your life. You're born, you die. I agree, we're going to die. That's part of our fate. But I don't necessarily agree with, it was destiny that I have the job I have now, or that I met the woman that is now my wife. I don't think that was preordained in any way. But I do agree with the Stoics on one major point regarding fate. We are born and we will die. Stoicism helps us to accept that fact and to work on removing the fear of that fact. To fear the inevitable is sort of illogical, really. And it's an absolute fact. We are going to die, and it reminds us to live now. There's no guaranteed later. So live now. Tomorrow may not arrive. There's a Stoic analogy of fate being like a dog being dragged behind a cart. So the dog's tied to the cart, and by a leash, and the cart's being pulled by a horse or whatever. And the dog has a couple of choices here. It can accept its current situation and trot along behind the cart, or it can fight, and it can be dragged by the cart through the mud puddles and down the road over the rocks. That analogy is supposed to reflect what the Stoics thought of our lives. Our lives are following a preset course, the course of fate. And we can go along with it and enjoy the view, and eventually we're going to reach the end destination, or we can deny it and fight it all the way and beat ourselves up and not really get to enjoy the view, just struggle the entire time until we reach the end. Now, I don't agree, as I said, that every part of your life is preordained, but I definitely know we're born and we die. So this analogy is still applicable. We know we're going to die. Don't pretend you're not going to. Don't deny it. Accept it and enjoy the ride. And while you're enjoying the ride, help those out along the way. Now, using this analogy further, we can tie in the idea of fortune. Fortune is luck. Good luck and bad luck. It's all the little crap that happens along the way. So fate are the big things that are, supposedly preordained. Fortune is, let's say you're the dog being dragged behind the cart. And let's say the cart has a lot of good food in it, money in it, and it also has rocks and poison and snakes and everything else in it. Different things fall out of the cart in front of the dog that's being dragged along. So you're being dragged along behind the cart and out plops a steak. That's good fortune. You're being dragged behind the cart and a rock falls out and hits you in the head. That's bad fortune. You're still going towards your destination. To put that in human terms, winning the lottery is an example of extreme fortune, whether it be good or bad in your view. Just having a high position, becoming famous. These are externals that are out of our control, and they are the gifts of fortune. Fortune can give you good things, fortune can give you bad things. And in the first little reading before I did the three main readings for the podcast, Seneca reminds us that we have to be willing to bear the missiles of fortune. He sees fortune as mostly doling out hard to deal with things like the loss of property or the loss of loved ones and things, and we have to be willing to accept the missiles of fortune full in the breast without flinching, because it is inevitable that they will happen. So some of this is slowly seeping into my mind and helping me to make changes in my own life. The other day, I was driving in traffic, and I missed a turn, and I had to go down this side road, backtrack around, get back to where I was going, and turn back on the main road. And I just went, and I turned, did everything I needed to do, got back on the road, and my wife said, "Wow, I guess Stoicism must really be working. Normally, you'd have blown up and have been angry by now." And I didn't even notice that I didn't get angry. I have a problem with that from time to time in frustrating situations, and I didn't even feel even a tiny pang of anger. That doesn't mean I still can't fly off the handle for stupid reasons, but in this case, I just accepted it as fate, if you will. This is out of my power, and I will just roll with it. And I hope I can really get that to go deeper into my psyche, so little things like that don't cause anger in me anymore, because it's really nice to it's really nice to be normal rather than flying off the handle over dumb stuff. So I hope that this podcast helps you to think about those two Stoic terms, and you can think about how deeply you accept them and want to think about them in your own life. But so remember that fate is the ultimate destinations in your life. Who you become, what you do for a living, who you meet, and all of that. So when you see the Stoics writing about that, I think they're really talking about those big events. But fortune is the little luck, the lack thereof, the good luck and the bad luck that strikes you along the way. The things that are out of our power, those things that the Stoics might call preferred and dispreferred indifference, those are the gifts of chance, the gifts of fortune. And sometimes we get hit right in the head with a bad gift of fortune. That rock hits you right between the eyes. And sometimes fortune shows up with, $100 you find on the ground, and you go, all right, this is a good day. But we're trying to not make the gifts of fortune be too important to us. If you think you need to be rich and famous to be happy, you're putting your hands in the gifts of chance. If you're going to let every little thing make you mad and get you upset, you're allowing other people and randomness to control your happiness. Both of these things are ludicrous. We are trying to find the philosopher's mean, as Seneca puts it, that middle ground where we roll with it and we can deal with it. So, roll with it, deal with it, email the show, and carpe diem.